No mai, haere mai, ki Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, brought to you by Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. Is this the turning point? Is the loss to England the moment that brings change? Is this the moment New Zealand rugby looks closely at its high-performance sector and asks, why can't the All Blacks and Black Ferns get it done when the big moment arrives? Is it tactics? Is it selections? Is it the coaching? Is it the pathways? Why did the All Blacks lose to England, and why is the composure not there when it counts? Why did Beauden Barrett play on when there was clearly a niggle? Where is Ruben Love? And when will he get a turn? With 2 years left until the World Cup, the review of the 2025 season could be one of the most important moments in returning All Blacks to the place the fans are accustomed. At least that's what we're seeing in your emails. You get it. This episode isn't all roses. England made sure of that. So plenty to talk about from New Zealand's perspective and across all the major tests on the weekend. We have heaps of your questions because Kiwis, they're unhappy. Plus, we have another Rugby Ready giveaway for a month of free training with All Blacks guru Nick Gill's training team. So buckle up. Here comes all the in-depth analysis you've come to expect from James Parsons, Bryn Hall, and our special guest this week, former Wales international Hadley Parkes. Welcome back, Hadley.
Thank you, Ross. Pleasure to be here.
Great time to be here. You know, it's such a happy show.
Yeah, very much sounds like it. Yeah.
We just got so many emails with people who are just fed up. And I was like, okay, well, we're going to have to talk a bit about this today, Jipper.
Oh, yes. I mean, there's two ways to look at it. If I'm to take my All Black hat off, I suppose it's World Rugby's alive and well in terms of tight contests, but I understand as an All Black fan, as an ex-All Black, and you know even the current group would admit they want to win every test, and yeah, it's been another challenging year.
It ain't that simple, Bryn, is it, to win all these test matches in the modern environment? How are you feeling after watching that test?
Pretty dejected, really, Ross. I think, you know, considering what was on the line, there's probably been a couple of test matches this year. You look at the South African game where we kind of lost that game in Wellington. It was a big moment for us around what was at stake. And then you probably look at that English test match around the Grand Slam on the line. And we'll probably go a little bit deeper into this, but in pressure situations, we just seem to be making the same mistakes. The same messages are kind of coming out of that camp around execution. We openly talk around in pressure situations. They're just not getting it right. So look, you probably look at that Cody Taylor yellow card and what happened after that, the momentum, and probably just before half time as well with George Ford's drop kicks. It just seems that we're not clicking, and it's probably been a word that I've used throughout the whole year. We're playing well in spurts. Look at the first 20 minutes, 2 tries, but then for whatever reason, we're not just able to get that polished performance of being able to, I guess, be like the South Africans and be quite clinical when all the pressure's on and when all the when everything's on the line.
When I look at that squad, that is the best players. You know, bar injury, they are the best players in that squad.
We've got to credit England. Like, they did turn up. They played extremely well. And I suppose from a point of view, if you look at the tries defensively, for me it was more majority about an individual error or communication breakdown versus a system or structure error. And I think we just haven't seen that in the All Blacks. They've really been strong defensively, and it was the first time they've probably leaked a lot of points. And
outside of Wellington.
Yeah, and then I suppose the other point is, I think where they'll be disappointed is probably they've had such a strength in the last 20 minutes. They've actually been a side that is, you know, have got a lot of punch off the bench, and we sort of touched on getting back to that whole 23 mindset and the timing of their substitutions. With niggles and injuries, it meant it had to come a little bit earlier and probably didn't allow that. And, you know, there was a big talk going into the week whose bench was going to have the bigger impact, and you'd have to say, you know, England, and I suppose that last try, you know, through the desperation and reaction time of Pollock to get the ball on the boot and, you know, obviously then the bounce into the corner. But I suppose that was a good reflection of we were just second in terms of those hard ball gets and I suppose those opportunities. But I agree with Bryn. Like, if you look at our discipline, we're actually very low in tackle count. But we make these big, I suppose, mistakes that lead to yellow cards. So there's no sort of like team warnings or build-up yellow cards. They're always straight yellow cards. And we can't avoid that did put, you know, the All Blacks under pressure. Not saying they couldn't survive it, but, you know, not having Cody on the field meant they couldn't kick out. They had to have that tap from about halfway. You know, all these sorts of things compound. And I suppose it's, you know, you miss touch. A lot of these, I mean, the positive is that we're in control of it. It's unforced errors, and we do have a high unforced error rate. If we could drop that, I don't think it's 32-19. It is. I get that the full-time whistle's gone, but we're in charge of a lot of the errors rather than the errors being forced onto us.
Certainly those entries into the 22 that were giving them on a platter with penalties and kicks weren't made to touch suggests that the game could have played out in a different way.
Yeah, could have, but look, I'll touch on the point that Chipper said before about England were good, and you've got to give them credit that they've won 10 on the bounce now. They've beaten Argentina twice in Argentina this year with all their Lions players away, and they've got a massive player pool there. There's a lot of depth, and so the way they're attacking, I don't think it's the old kind of what we think of 10-man Northern Hemisphere rugby anymore. It's the way they're attacking. You don't normally associate England with having more line breaks than the All Blacks, and they had more line breaks, and they look good on attack and on D as well. So, certainly you talked about the last 20 minutes at the moment with the All Blacks, how they have been good this year, and that was a work on, so they'll be happier that this year they have been better than last year in that aspect of the game, but obviously in the weekend it just didn't quite go that way.
It worked against them because when England came here in 2024, the All Blacks dominated the last 20 minutes. England have gone and looked at their bench, put possibly their best front row on the bench, gone with this POM squad and a 6-2 split. And New Zealand, Jipper, have continued with the 5-3 and continued to get beaten in the collisions late in games.
Yeah, no, I don't think every game.
Yeah.
I think we've actually really upped our ante. I think in this game, yes, and there's an element of niggles that forced, I suppose the timing forced the hand of that, but that's rugby, I get that. But one thing I'll say about the England bench, everyone wants to start. Everyone wants to start, but I do think the fact that, I suppose, Wallace, they were trying to match Pollock, I do think there was some really good thought around the selections. Could have they gone 6-2? Potentially, but, I think we have shown enough with the 5-3 that and held our own for the, majority, apart from Wellington and on the weekend. Physically, we did front up. There's a massive drop, 43% gain line for the All Blacks. We've been well in high 50s. England had 64% gain line. So that is a considerable drop. And a lot of that, if you look at it from an analytical point of view, a lot of the drop in that was around the yellow card again. I hate to keep bringing it back, but you're down a man and I suppose you're having to do things that maybe you've trained, the what-ifs, I'm not too sure, but you lose a key player. A hooker is pretty key.
Possibly the most.
Yeah, but again, it just doesn't allow you to, I suppose, attack with the confidence and authority and no thought, no clutter. You're sort of having to make things up on the run, and it just alleviates your ability. And you know what it's like when there's a yellow card defensively with 15. It's almost you've got no fear because you're one up and you can really bring that line speed and smack them behind the gain line. So I just think there's a lot of context that needs to be put in an isolated game. I know you look at the year now, it's 3 losses. We spoke about, All Blacks want 100% every year, but from a context point of view, positive is we are in control of a lot of the mistakes.
Yeah.
Not every team can say that. I don't think Wales can say that. That's the reality. It's a better. I think it's a better place. If you're having a high unforced error rate that you can control, I'd rather have the control than say big system breakdowns. Does that make sense? If you've got big system breakdowns, that's a whole team wide rather than individual execution decision making.
One of the hard things, though, is it's relatively consistent over the last even 4 or 5 years where things haven't quite hit the mark at times in big test matches. And a lot of your emails have suggested to us that you feel that the game has moved on from the New Zealand style of play, the structure. Emails from Lance Peters and Matthew Villiamu basically saying that New Zealand's ability to attack and use instinct is now gone from the game because the incredible structure that's now provided within modern rugby and the other teams are succeeding. Bryn, do you agree with that?
No, I don't. I think, look, we've had a lot of games this year where we've been able to attack and been able to show our ability. Even look on the weekend for our scrum attack. Will Jordan and that group were able to see that the defensive side of the English were really, really tight, and we were able to use our skill set and our ability to be able to get on the outside. I think our click attack, any time we've been able to when the hard ball gets, which has probably been a little bit of a kryptonite for us, especially in the aerial game, we've been able to show glimpses of us trying to counter-attack. But no, I don't think so. I think there's just a big part to be able to attack. I think the stats that Jip brought on around 43% gain line, it's really, really tough to be able to attack and being able to use the tip balls, get over the advantage line to then be able to swing or attack in, I guess, in a lot of layers of attack around there with what we probably saw with England and even the South Africans at the moment. So I think it just comes down to, for us, we've got to get a lot of things right. So if we get our good go forward ball, we get good gain line, where we get over the advantage line, then it opens up a lot of us for us to be able to open up our attack. Also, our click attack, when we are winning those hard ball gets off the aerial battle, we've got a quick 2-pass, we're able to get away and being able to use our attack and our strength with our looses on the edge, outsides, and being able to get over the advantage line. But when we don't get, I think more so the gain line, you look on the weekend, it's really, really difficult for us to be able to try and attack. And I think we probably played a little bit too much, Chip, in Hadley, I thought. I think in that probably middle of the field, we played a lot and we were able to go to the contestable game, which I think, it's not a flaw, but I think it's just a big part of the game when you aren't going anywhere. How can you put pressure on the team? And I thought the English did really, really well when they scored points. Alex Mitchell, even they only had 13 kicks in the second half, but they kicked with purpose and trying to get that ball back and were able to win that scraps battle to then open up the counter-attack with what we saw with this English team, which is pretty impressive to watch on the weekend.
Based on trends, we're the most efficient side from turnovers. So turnover attack, and a lot of the turnovers are coming from the contestable game. So I actually think, the change of rules is feeding into our DNA, what we know.
On attack.
On attack.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that I've mentioned when we struggled against South Africa, a lot of their sacrificial ruck setting. Now, bear with me here, because I've tried to come up with an answer through the stats. So we concede the most dominant tackles. So teams can have, I suppose, how do I explain? We concede the most, so teams have a lot of dominance defensively against us.
We're getting smashed.
Yeah, well, not like high numbers, like dominant tackles. So there was 9 on the weekend to our 2.
Yeah.
To give you numbers, and there's over 200 tackles. So it's not like a massive percentage. But we then have the most post-contact meters. So where I think this plays a part, so we concede dominance, we have the most post-contact meters, and we had 88% lightning quick ball on the weekend. So when you look at that, that's quick ball. You're trying to generate quick ball. Sometimes maybe it's behind the gain line, but you can still do things with that. But where I think defences are getting a lot of their dominant tackles from, one is the yellow cards, that's true. 2 is our post-contact meters actually buys defenders time to scan. Mm. And with that scanning, they're having the ability to communicate and know, are we going to chance our arm or are we going to drift and use the sideline? And most of the time when there's that, that extra, 2 or 3 metres, that takes 5 or 6 seconds fighting through defenders. Yes, it's across the gain line, but due to that time and the nature of defensive structures, you're actually not worried about out there unless it's a midfield ruck. So they're just flying. And that's when they're getting a lot of dominant tackles. So I'm not saying it's a solution, because as a player, you always want post-contact meters. It's a good stat to have. But it's, I suppose, understanding, is there something we can look at where, the Springboks just don't go for post-contact meters every time, and it looks purposeful to me, rather than the defenders getting into the ground. Do you hear? So, I'm not saying that is the solution, but it's an area that I've identified where we differ, and it doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of how the game's played. In terms of post-contact meters, are supposed to be good, but it seems to be leading to us, getting hit behind the gain line after that. Mm.
Which is interesting, actually, because as a defensive team, you want to have time in the tackle, don't you? Just so as you can get your defensive line set. And so that's actually a very interesting way of looking at it.
And we just have athletes that love post-contact meters. Our loose forwards, for example, they all dominate the collision and then fight. I'm just saying, is there something that we can manipulate defences or create set plays, like we see from the tap kicks, that can potentially fool defences, and you almost create your own ruck. You touch and drop, and then from that, we know that we've got a certain attacking play, and they just have no time to get ready.
Yeah.
It's an option.
Yeah.
Not a coach by trade, so not sure if it will work. Yeah. But the stats don't lie.
It kind of sounds like the Brumbies in the late 90s, early 2000s, where they would almost fall into the tackle, and then that Gregan would have it to Larkham in a split second and it was all over.
Yeah, we did it a lot at times for set moves in Super Rugby, but not, I just think there's something we can manipulate there, because defence is all about preparation, and that they would know what's coming. It's not going to be something you fix this, but in terms of the review, I think it's an opportunity for us to manipulate and put defence in we're playing on our terms, we're attacking on our terms, and it's something they haven't seen. If you can go between the two and know, okay, when we do get post-contact meetings, what works best for us to get to the edge? Okay, when we do sacrificial rucks, what works well for us? And then it just makes it so much harder as a defender, because you're having to think of two things.
We've had a lot of emails, as I mentioned earlier, and basically a lot of them looking at whether this is a turning point, as I mentioned in the intro, the Ashley and Martin turning point, as it might be. So we've obviously got to a point now, we're 2 years out from the World Cup. Last time they brought in Joe Schmidt for a couple of years. Do they need to be looking in that direction to go, okay, is there somebody else that can come and can help us fix a problem?
But it's just not real. Like, he's made it pretty clear. Like, he's Aussie and done.
No, what I mean, a Joe Schmidt kind of character.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing, is like, who is there? Like, it's one thing saying this is an option, like, it's not like... And it's not just one person either. Like, it's who's available in the group, and like it's a big piece of I don't know.
Depends on relationships there as well within the coaching group too. So, but to touch on one of Jipper's points then as well, like a couple of their tries came from probably defensive reads that didn't go too well or a missed tackle. So they are easy fixes. Like, missed tackles do happen in a game, but. And a lot of the time they don't lead to a try, but unfortunately on this time it did. So hopefully, they're easy fixes.
Yeah. We had Gainline Analytics come on the show a number of times, and what they like to talk about is selection and players who've played together before. And unfortunately, Tupaia and Proctor have never really played together before in a midfield, and you're throwing them into one of the biggest test matches of the year.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that was... I'm not saying like that was the reason for it, but I did make mention Anton might have been, but I think because he was on the bench, maybe they were going, how's it going to go? Captain Hindsight, he's the best superhero in the world, but that is a big factor. And even like Leroy Carter's in that Dingwall try? Yeah. So he was always going to tackle Lawrence. Lawrence did well, like getting on the outside and going between them to force Tupaia to be thinking, but the communication and connection just wasn't there, and I agree with that's like one of the easiest fixes.
But Bruno, I heard you say, you've got to put yourself in a position sometimes, don't you, to win a game via your selections. And I personally, watching it, I wondered why Beauden Barrett, who'd had an injury heading into the game and then was obviously struggling, wasn't replaced earlier, and selecting a brand new midfield combination for a game that's going to cost you a Grand Slam possibly if you don't win it seems like a bold call.
Yeah, look, we don't obviously know how bad it was with Bodie, but I think, when he couldn't probably kick out for touch early doors, and a guy like Damon who played so well on the weekend, talk around the weekend before, the trust element, you'd probably just want to put him out there, and obviously not too privy around like why that happened. But I think the biggest thing for me is, the things that Hadley and Jip have touched on around, certain situations around defensively missing tackle or an error that came down to the individual. I think that's fair. There has been growth around this year. We talked about probably last year, how many unforced errors we had last year was a massive talking point. We weren't able to finish. We've been a lot better in that space. Now, it hasn't been perfect, but we've been a lot better. And our efficiency inside the 22 was a big area last year. We were really poor. And Jip's touched on it a lot this year. We've been really, really good and around this year. The biggest thing for me is it's been 2 games this year. It's been the South African 40 minutes in Wellington, and probably the English second half is around, and I talked about it earlier, in pressure moments, we're just not getting the right outcome when the furnace is really on us. We're not able to identify it and being able to find solutions and have momentum to stop their momentum. And so does that come down to the mental side of it? Gilbert Anoka was a big part of the All Blacks around being there. I'm not too sure who's in there now. I think it is Cherry Evans, who's a little bit different and worked with Razor at the Crusaders. But I just look at the mental side. And this is only in my opinion, when it has been those 2 big test matches, we haven't been able to find solutions. We've made crucial areas, whether it's defensive, whether it's someone not executing at the right time, it's a penalty in a crucial situation. We haven't been able to get that right. So that's where I'm kind of seeing it at the moment. It's around just in the mental space, not being able to find a solution to be able to try win games when the blowtorch is on us like it was on the weekend. 22 points in the second half. I think like England had 4 entries. They scored 3 tries. They got a penalty. So they obviously had momentum and we just weren't able to stunt that. And it was very similar to what we saw in Wellington where the Springboks got their tails up. We weren't able to stop them.
When you've got different people making those mistakes, but it's in a wider team environment, what is the way that you create the solution?
I think just trust with each other and trust in the system. And they've got a good system. Like the defence has been very good this year. And so maybe it was just a misread. And then it's also, marking up on Ollie Lawrence. So he was having a good game. You were talking about it off air before. He's a pretty big threat. And so that could be in the back of your mind about how big a threat he's got, how good a ball carrier he is, and it might just put you, you're second guessing a little bit. But I guess if someone does go in, everybody has to jam at the same time as well because you've got to follow your inside because you'd prefer a team when they're on attack to go around you rather than going through you. You can recover a lot easier. Probably not so much when you're in your 22, but when you're further out, you can actually get back and recover if they go around you rather than through you.
So what you're saying is when Tupaia went in to try to stop Ollie Lawrence, he needed Billy Proctor to also come with him.
Probably jam as well, yes.
Yeah.
Well, and normally they say, like, as long as it's kind of hard with Rushdie because the outside does get ahead sometimes, but you've got to have the ability, the peripheral vision to go because you can recover if they go wide. Like, they may score, but you'd rather them score out there than straight through the heart. So, that's why, I suppose, from a player's sense, that is, so easy. One-on-one tackle on Lawrence for the first try, easy. Pick and go, that's, again, pretty simple fix in terms of, getting lower and holding it out. So, I'm not making excuses. There definitely needs to be some growth in and around the positions they're putting themselves in. But you've got to commend England's attitude. It's been a big shift. Borthwick was under the pump. It felt like only 12 months ago. Their rush defence was, leaving all sorts of holes, and he's done a remarkable. The whole group. Players and player leaders and the management group have done a remarkable job to really change the narrative. And I think the escort rule has played right into their hands. It suits their game. Yeah.
So, Brent, does that mean New Zealand can do it too? 12 months, you're not far away. 12 months, everything can change?
I'd hope to think so. I think the boys kind of brought it on, said it pretty nicely. Who else would we really bring in, right? So they've obviously made a commitment for a 4-year plan. There's been 2 years. We're here talking around, have they made the right improvements? Have they got better? And I don't think there's probably anybody else that we'd be able to put in there. It's be able to be like we were talking about Ian Foster probably 2 years ago. We talked about Razor, having his coaches come in, but at the moment, there's probably Jamie Joseph. If Jamie Joseph was the coach, would Tony Brown possibly come back? There is obviously the cohesion that they do have. But for me, I don't see another option really at the moment who would be able to, I guess, come in, not just Razor, but all the coaches that are around him as well.
If you, a family member or a friend, wants to get into rugby shape, we have the giveaway to suit. Along with All Blacks trainer Dr. Nick Gill's Rugby Ready team, we're trying to get the rugby community, whether you're a player or fan, fit and strong. Each week, one winner will receive 4 weeks of free access to the Rugby Ready Before membership with full access to all of Dr. Nick Gill's pre-season, in-season, off-season and specialty programs to help take your game to the next level. A huge congratulations to this week's winner of the Rugby Ready giveaway, James Roger. You've scored 4 weeks of free access to the Rugby Ready Before membership. Thanks again to everyone who entered. We loved reading your stories. And if you didn't win this time around, don't worry, you're still in the running. So keep those amazing submissions coming, and it could be your name we announce next week. If you want in, it's simple. Just DM Rugby Ready on Instagram with the code ARP and tell them why you'd love to win. And of course, if you miss out, you can get 75% off memberships through ARP by going to the link or using the QR code below. Now let's get into this New Zealand-Wales game. Hadley, it has been a tough time, basically since you left, for Wales. The two teams are in a similar position in that people expect this from the All Blacks and they're a little bit down here. And the Welsh team also, there's much higher expectations in the performance that they've been delivering. So what do you think are the ways to get out of a slump like that?
Well, especially in Wales, is that they expect a lot more than probably what they have been getting. And they did have an amazing team, or a very good team, from about 2011 through to about 2019, and it went for another couple of years as well, because they did win the Six Nations in 2021 as well. But because they had those very good players, they probably stayed with those players for a long period of time, and then a lot of them, you know, they played 80, 90, 100 tests, then they all kind of retired and moved on. And maybe they hadn't blooded through a few more players to come through, and it's now a very young squad. And so then, or an experienced squad that probably hasn't played as much test footy as they would have liked. And with doing that as well, so the team was going well, and with the international side doing so well, it might have papered over a few cracks that were appearing in the regional game. And that funding going back into the regional game might not quite have gone to the right people or to the organisations. Those organisations at times are also at loggerheads with the international game as well. There's probably not as good a communication between what New Zealand Rugby and sometimes the Super Rugby sides do have here, because they're all owned by New Zealand Rugby. Apart from the Blues have a share.
Most have private ownership, but not majority.
Not majority. And so then, but in Wales, they are all private ownership. So Wales Rugby Union doesn't have a huge amount of say over what they can do. So it's similar to what is in England as well. So how those organisations spend their money is up to them, and it probably hasn't been reinvested back into the grassroots within those regions, or within the coaching coming through as well. So I think, there's a bit to work on, but hopefully, you know, a win in the weekend and a bit, you know, hopefully, you know, we can see them bouncing back and just getting better and better. New coaching team coming in as well, which, you know, Steve Tandy, he's done a different pathway as well. He was in Wales. He then went to the Waratahs for 6 years. I think it was with Daryl Gibson and over there. And then he also went to Scotland as well for the last few years as well. So he's coming back to Wales with a bit of experience, and experience from outside of Wales too. So hopefully he can do a great job. The boys like him. He's changed a few things up apparently, and got a coaching squad around him that he has chosen. So hopefully, you know, it'll all go well going forward.
I think like when you have such a big exodus of that experience through a number of players, the thing that you can't prepare for is probably the things you've learned to take for granted, that you don't actually, they're not prescribed roles during the week, but senior players sort of do a lot of unseen work that not everyone knows about, and actually transferring that responsibility onto another player is probably not thought about with a lot of sides. It's just something that they do. And then when it actually comes out of the system and you haven't blooded people to fill those gaps, it can spread people pretty thin, you know, usually coaching staff, because if you don't have that experience or knowledge as players, you can't fill that void. So I think that's a big factor. It's during the week, you know, like the game is what we see, but it's what they can do or what they need to identify that's not there currently that's allowing them to transfer that onto the field under pressure.
So what you saw against Japan, and there were huge celebrations by the sounds of it in Cardiff, after getting that win after 10 straight losses at home in a row. Good reason to celebrate. They close down those streets and get into the pubs, the Angel or wherever. But what did you see there about, you know, the excitement and the development of that team?
I think their attack has gone slightly better, trying to chuck the ball around a little bit more. But what... they've always been a country that kind of backed their defence, and so they went to the box kick quite a lot in the weekend, and so then in contestables, and I think they probably saw an opportunity against Japan to win back the aerial battle there, and Japan probably saw the same back with Wales. So we saw a lot of box kicking, and no one really took advantage of those that aerial game. So look, I think hopefully just a bit of character within the side, and if they can get their box kicking going well, if they can get their attack going well, and then their defence as well, hopefully, you know, contestable kicks has been an area of the game that Wales always backed themselves on, and we had a world-class couple of back three players that were very good under the high ball, and if they can get back to that, then they hopefully, you know, it's something that we kind of backed. Yeah,
I mean, the big concern for them will be, you know, if you look at the current trend, we got a trend report this week, and looking at New Zealand, 40% of their tries come from turnovers, and that's a big stat, and it's something that New Zealand is known for, but it hasn't been that high for a long time. So I suppose that growth in New Zealand's game is concerning for Wales, having had 19 turnovers on the weekend. If you're going to turn the ball over 19 times against a side that systems thrive under that turnover conditions and players sort of come to life, I mean, it's the danger signs are there. And I think defensively they were really accurate, but they, probably don't have that big body or someone that, that can sort of just have that dominance in the collision. If you look at the teams that are consistently winning, the South Africa, the Englands, they just win collision. Like, they win collision, they have speed of ball, but more importantly, defensively, they have the highest dominant tackle rate. And so it stops attacking systems get down, and I suppose that's the big focus, I think, for Wales is, bulking up some of these young men and being able to play to the strengths that you guys had up until that 2019, sorry.
And on that defensive set as well, is that they defended for long periods of time. I think Japan, I saw a stat towards the end of the game, and the top 5 performers for ball carriers were all Japanese players. And so then you can't give the All Blacks that many opportunities. And so their defence is going to have to be onto it. But they're also you can't just defend against the All Blacks and hope to win. You actually have to score points against them, because the All Blacks are a very good a counter-attacking side. And so if you don't score points, you're not going to win. And there's almost a mental block there as well, is that Wales haven't won against the All Blacks in, I think, 70 to 80 years. I think it was 70 years when I was there, so it'll be up there now. So, look, we had the same problem against Australia and South Africa as well. We managed to win games against them both, and now consistently we can actually, not right now, but for a period there we were winning, every second game against those teams. So you almost got to get over that little hurdle of winning one against the All Blacks, and hopefully it can turn into something like Ireland has been able to do with the All Blacks and how their performance has gone with them. And so it's been pretty tight between those two nations in the last, 10 games. So.
Was the conversation quite different heading into an All Blacks week because of that? Was there something different in the approach?
No, it was all, I guess for Warren there was a little bit of a personal side to it as well, but playing international footy, every team you look at it in depthly. So you look at the Springboks, you knew they were going to be physical. They had a very good kicking game back then. Now they've got the X factor as well, and so they're almost they're the triple threat, and they're a very good side. You then looked at Australia, and what they were not as physical as the All Blacks and the Springboks, but they were a very good attacking side, and they could have X factor and skin you from anywhere. And then you looked at the All Blacks, and they had physicality, they had X factor, and a good team that, mate, you looked at them and you said, if we give them an opportunity, they're going to take it. If we give them, we talked about the high ball game, the aerial game. If we're not accurate in that part of the game, then their counter-attacking ability is probably second to none, or it was. And I think even with Will Jordan now, he's outstanding in that aspect of the game in counter-attack. So, it was just, if we are going to kick it, then we have to have a good chase line in play, because they can skin us from anywhere if they wanted to.
That's the 50-50 of the chaos of the high ball, right? Because New Zealand is struggling to take consistent high balls. In fact, everyone is struggling to take consistent high balls. You can get them or you can get burnt.
Yeah. But I think as well, everyone looks at the high ball catch, but for me, the teams that are doing well are just not allowing their opposition to kick on their terms. And I know we say it all the time, but if you look at some of the times the counter-rucking from South Africa or Ireland, even England on the weekend, it rushes the halfback if they're looking for a box kick. They feel those bodies starting to come over. It's a big risk, because our team's going to chance their arm. If they commit too many bodies, can they get it to width? But they seem to be efficient in the sense that they send one or two and then they'll bounce out. But by that time, you've done the damage. So I think, for Wales, having that ability to kick on their terms and maybe kick a little bit quicker, because I think if they set up the centipede, there's going to be some bodies flying in there, and it's going to probably go from bad to worse if they kick too long. It has to be a genuine contest. And then I think it's the same for New Zealand. They need to send bodies in there, probably more than they have, especially from those wide breakdowns, to fluster the kickers, to make them feel that pressure, so that it just goes, 2 or 3 more metres further, just buys you, that second that you need to be able to then counter-attack from there.
Mm-hmm. Now, watching on the weekend and seeing Rees-Zammit back in the team, it's good to see for Wales. I mean, given, he went over to the NFL, he's come back and he seems to inject something there. Like, the Welsh love to hang on to a superstar, whether it was Gavin Henson or somebody to love, and that should bring them some optimism.
Andy Howell as well. Yes, look, he came onto the scene and was outstanding, mate. He was quick. I think he was in camp my last Six Nations. He came in and he was a good kid. Was keen, just getting stuck in. He was actually left Wales and went to Gloucester. I don't know if he went to school in England, but he was playing for Gloucester and doing extremely well in the Premiership over there. Went to the NFL, mate. You can't blame him for that opportunity, mate. If it had gone well, which I think it went relatively well, he didn't quite crack it probably as much as he wanted to, but that would have been amazing for him. And also, Wales obviously started following the NFL very closely. But to have him come back, he looks bigger. I think he still looks like he's got that quick, that speed, and he brings a bit of an entourage in a way as well, a little bit around the camp like Gavin Henson did, and a little bit more high profile because every second article was actually almost about him in Wales Online. A great paper, by the way. And so, so it's good to see him back and he brings a bit more of a high profile probably into that squad and what he's doing.
Were you a contributor?
We had a couple of chats.
Can I just say on that though, because every second article is about, it does take the pressure off.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't that way before he came back. It was very negative. So it does take the limelight, which the role sort of Rusty plays for South Africa is when the pressure's on, he sort of steps into that space and creates a narrative that focuses on him. As long as, I don't know Rees-Zammit personally, but I'm sure he can handle it. So there's that positive. But then I think what he learned in the NFL, not that he didn't have professional standards, but the NFL in terms of their detail and professionalism throughout the week is another level on its own. So I think, again, it's something to follow. It's sort of the Sonny Bill effect. As young men will be like, man, that's where I want to be. I want to have, what Rees-Zammit has, and they'll start, I suppose, replicating his week. And if he can have those high professional standards, then you'll just see, all boats rise. And I think that's the exciting thing from a Welsh point of view of having him in and around that environment more often.
One of the decisive things that happened in that game between Wales and Japan was when Hopkins for Japan cocked his arm, didn't do the wrap, and got the yellow. And that was for a Welsh team, it looked like they're probably going to lose it the moment they got them straight back into that game. What is going on at the moment, do you think, with the number of players who are getting done for that kind of hit? We've seen it happen with the South Africans. Is it a coaching thing? What do you think is going on right now with that being the current yellow card du jour?
Maybe because a lot of emphasis is put on the dominant collisions and dominant tackles, and so then maybe having your arm like this, you can actually be more dominant than putting your arm like that. So if you get the first hit like that, then wrap might be a mindset, but obviously you're running a risk there as well in terms of the officials. And that did pretty much cost them the game because they were in the driver's seat there. So
I think it's an element of this second defender, because a lot of the time it's like when they just give it that one and there's not necessarily the opportunity to wrap because someone else is there, or they're very effective with that. They don't get the chance to wrap because they drop to the ground. So I think it's a little bit of, I'd say, I don't want to use the word laziness, but that's the only one I can think of right now is not dropping that body height. I spoke about it after South Africa's won last week. It's always the tall guy, or it's normally a bigger body against a little guy, and most of the time they've just started in a high position, and then as they come forward, they're not sort of in a position to sort of just drive through. So they try to utilise that. I don't think it's coached. I just think that there's definitely more focus on it from the referees. They've obviously picked it up. That it's become a thing. So now we're sort of identifying it now. I'm sure there's many more before that's made the referees change. So I think you'll see behaviours change pretty quickly because it is dictating games.
Yeah.
Except for South Africa. But
they can play
12 players and still win. Yeah. So I think, like players, your only currency is performance, and if you're taking yourself out of the opportunity to perform, it will become a selection issue. So normally that will dictate those behaviours changing, and you'll see the bigger men start at a lower position off that defensive line.
In a world, like you say, where the desire to get that dominant tackle in, like, it's got to be
but it's actually not that effective, this.
Yeah.
Like, because your most powerful resource is these things.
Yeah, I can see.
And your glutes. So actually starting low and going through and getting that leg drive. Yeah. So technically, you just got to get low, and you know, sprinters start low. So from a rush defence point of view, like everything points to start low. It's just when players either think they're not going to pass the ball in their area, or they've just sort of buttoned off, but then someone makes a late decision to change into their line and they're not prepared to make from what I've seen anyway.
Yeah. From
the red cards that have been, it just looks more individual inaccuracy than anything in terms of a theme.
The South Africans, of course, copped a full red for Mostert going in with an armless tackle as well, but it doesn't really matter for them, does it? They could play with nobody on the field and still win somehow. Quite incredible. But in saying that, Hadley, the Italians fired a lot of shots.
They certainly did. They looked good. And they had a good win the weekend before against Australia. And look, maybe, I think, was it 3 penalties missed in the first half as well? So the scoreline could have been in front at half time, or it would have been 9-10 or something. And so, look, I thought they went very well. South Africa scored too late, like a late penalty and a try before half time, and then second half, it wasn't until about the 70th minute that they ran away. Yeah, then they ran away off it. So I thought it was a good contest.
I always think though, like, do you not just go all in? When you're playing a powerhouse, they've given some guys some opportunities. Is 3 points going to do it? Like, I think if they get those 3, like when Argentina's had success against the bigger nations, they've kicked from everywhere, but they've gone at 100%. So I think, like, you have to know you're going to get the points because you forego so much. Like, down to 14. You've got to back yourself with that attack. Monty Ioane, Kopowotso, the speed, you can't coach speed. They are electric. Like, I was just screaming at the TV going, not that I want South Africa to lose or anything, I don't want to get online abuse this week, so, but it's just like the opportunity's there. Like, it's right there.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was just, I feel they missed a trick.
Yeah.
To go back to back, beat Aussie, beat South Africa, it would have been a hell of a story.
Yeah. Bruno, when you look at that team, the Italians, that is, the slickness of their attack, they're almost French-like in the way they make it look easy.
Oh, they were unbelievable. I think you even look at Kaputza's try when I think it was like maybe the 60th, 65th minute, the last try that they scored. Like, they obviously saw a trend around the short side, going back down the short side, little inside balls. And I think there was actually a little bit of a line break earlier in the game where they saw that as a little bit of a plan to try and go through the heart of the South Africans. But yeah, I agree. I think who was it? It was Van Staden with a yellow card in the 51st minute when they were down to 13 men. I was just like, man, like, you're just not going to beat the South Africans taking a penalty here. Like, how hard is it to defend with 13 players and the way that they were attacking and the amount of quick ball that they're actually operating at? I just thought it was a missed chance. And, you know, you look at probably the last 10 minutes, the game was right on the balance, as Hadley said. It was 2014 with about 10 minutes to go, but to their credit and what they're doing really well at the moment, South Africa, it doesn't matter who's playing, they're very clinical when it counts. You know, 2 tries, Graham Williams scores another try in the 72nd minute around a great quick shift to Moody, and then being able to get that ball on the inside, and then obviously Hooker's try to be able to ice it in the 79th minute with the Boks crossfield kick under pressure. You know, they were able to get the win. But yeah, a missed opportunity for Italy because even defensively as well, Jip, man, I thought defensively they were dominating the collision area in a lot of times when they were defending with the South Africans. So, yeah, I was really, really impressed with the Italians. And I think, you know, can't believe I'm saying this, but the one that kind of got away with the Italians and the way they played, they were outstanding and just were able to get the result, I guess, with not taking opportunities and a few mistakes here and there when they really needed it. And the South Africans doing what they do best, scored 2 tries in the last 10 minutes.
I think the interesting thing as well, just 2 points to build on there. First, Kopowotsu's try. You know, we spoke about last week, Bryn, or the week before, around the switch swing attack is like the new. It's almost the new weapon that everyone's trying to use, and I feel like the Italians showed that picture, and that's what created that inside ball. It was a set move, definitely, because Kopawatsu wasn't even with the bird's eye view shot, which I'm loving. I'm loving the old high view. And then he comes in and injects himself. But it's cool to just see the evolution of this new sort of switch. And it's actually awesome to see Italy probably being the trendsetters to have the ball back inside is one, Bryn. And then the other one was, you spoke about the mental edge and having the ability to be composed. Like South Africa, back-to-back, full red cards. And even when it was tight, they just don't look phased. They just know they're going to win. And having that ability and belief, you know what it's like? It's just like, it's such a good feeling when you're the side that have it.
Mate, they've obviously got a huge amount of depth because they had 19 changes for that game as well. So to have that and just that amount of strength and depth that they've got, and they've gone away from just that brutality that they used to just have in a kicking game. Like, they have a lot of X factor now. They've got some players that are outstanding. So, mate, they are. Yeah, that's setting the benchmark, aren't they?
But like, Rusty will put himself out there. Like, he is genuinely prepared to lose, and he'll front.
And take the big picture.
Yeah, and take the pressure off players. Do you know what I mean? So, like, they're not saying, but having that freedom, as a player, to know that, it's not the end of the world, is pretty powerful.
Well, you saw it in the second test in Wellington as well. So they lost at Eden Park, and then they went to Wellington and completely changed the team altogether. And you're like, what's he up to here? And then you saw what happened. So.
But even in the first half of that, like, that wasn't going well. It wasn't working. And it's like he said at halftime, double down.
Yeah.
And then they go and score a record. That is, he's bold. He's bold.
Yeah. Man, yeah, they just are a lot more bold, and we're probably a lot more conservative. And that's probably the reason why probably haven't seen changes with the Ruben Love or people that haven't been able to play a lot of minutes, because I think the pressure of being in New Zealand and the expectation of winning every single game, Razor hasn't had that. Well, he has had the opportunity to do it, but just hasn't been able to do it, and has been way more conservative around his selections and not to what the South Africans have.
It's a tough sell to the New Zealand public, though, isn't it? It could be a maturation in our approach, but it's a tough sell.
It'd be very tough, yeah.
It's definitely never going to be bought.
Yeah.
It's certainly not. And I'm a big fan for consistency of selection and, rewarding, making it the best 23 available in the coach's opinion each week as well. But I do think this week presents opportunity for the All Blacks to make those changes.
Yeah, we'll surely see changes from South Africa too as they head into Ireland.
We'll see changes everywhere.
We'll see changes all over the place. But that looks like a cracking test. The Irish found something against Australia a little bit more than they had against New Zealand. They looked pretty strong.
Yeah, they did, and they scored some good tries. And they weren't just being direct. It was a good attacking play. Their attack's quite layered as well at times, with people swinging around. They're playing a good brand of rugby at the moment.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I still probably put South Africa as favourites, just for everything we've just explained. But Ireland, you can see they were sort of rusty out of the off-season in Chicago, and now they're getting back to the Ireland we know. And Ireland's biggest strength is their defence. So South Africa and Ireland are the top two defensively, statistically across every key metric that you want. So I think it'll be the battle of the defences and who can break down each one.
Brutal.
I think Ireland will take it out, man. Dublin will be going off.
It would be going off. Brennan, when you look at the Australians, that was the first time they'd ever conceded over 30 points against Ireland. It's hard to watch, isn't it? Because we thought they were getting somewhere.
Yeah, look, and I think, to Ireland's credit, they played a good brand of footy and been able to score points. The Australians stayed in there, but I think at the same time, we talk around with probably the All Blacks, South Africa, and the depth. Even we talked about how they talked around England, the depth that they have. It just seems, like that team has pretty much been the same team the whole year that's played for the Australians. So, whether it's a bit of fatigue and being able to get there, have that mental fortitude to be able to stay on for the consistency for the whole year. And there's no disrespect to Australia. It looked a little bit flat and a little bit laboured. And I think Ireland, to what Jip's point was, finding their groove and not being in that first test match, which we probably got them at a good time. So a little bit disappointing, but what are they? They're 0-3, right, after the Northern Hemisphere. So one more to go, I believe, and but it's tough. That's a tough tour. It doesn't get any easier for them.
Now, don't judge me for this.
Oh, well. Come on.
I went back and watched Ireland versus the Wallabies last season, where it was 22-19.
Just because you had a couple of spare hours.
I was just interested to see. To see. And a big weapon, and as we all remember, with Suoli'i on the India tour, was his ability in the air.
Yeah.
And we now have a rule that you can't escort.
Yeah.
And we just don't see it. Like, I just do not understand. Like, Jorgensen, Suoli'i, you must be able to find a way to kick that thing to the heavens and get them to get the ball going. Like, I would go to it every time. I would just keep doing it. Every time, just keep doing it. It's like when they had Israel Folau. I don't see how it can fail. With the athletes they have. And like Suoli'i in last year's game, like, set up the tries that put them ahead, and he just doesn't seem to be used.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I'm not sure. I've been banging this drum for far too long, so I won't bore with the same stuff. But it just seems such a waste. And he was at centre as well last year, and they found ways to utilise him. So it's not my fixation with moving him to the edge, but.
But as a midfielder as well, like, if you're kicking off 10 and kicking in the middle of the field, like, there's no escorts. And I know the escorts game is out of it, but like, it's more of a contest of being able to win the ball as it is at the moment kicking off 9. And I know Jake Gordon's a really good exponent, not being able to kick the box kick, but geez, it could be just 2 or 3 players that are during an exit area, 40-metre line up, and they would get off the top, get Edmund or O'Connor to put it in the middle of the field. And Suoli'i's running onto it in the middle of the field, which I think is just a way more easier way to do it as well. If you can't get him on the box kick, which they probably could have manufactured in a way, kick it in the middle of the field like a Gary Owen, and good luck to you to try and win that ball when he's coming at full speed in the middle of the field.
Yeah, it's very difficult to defend that, isn't it, as the opposition midfielders, because they're coming forward as well, and then they've got to turn around and chase back after you. So it certainly is it's hard to defend that when someone does to put that little kick through there.
Right, let's have a look at the games that's coming the weekend. Firstly, Wales versus New Zealand, Jip.
Big bounce back. Go the All Blacks.
Yeah, come on.
I don't think they'll be breaking the drought, to be honest. I think the All Blacks, New Zealand.
Fair enough. And that's 3, Brenner?
Yeah, it's got to be the All Blacks.
Okay, the game of the weekend, Bryn. Ireland versus South Africa.
I've got to go with South Africa.
South Africa for me.
All round?
No, Timble Bar will be going off Ireland today, mate.
You just want to go to the place where the party's the best.
It's a hell of a tour.
Yeah. Aviva. No, Ireland will be good.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, France versus Australia.
France
versus Australia.
France.
And no chance at all for the Aussies?
No chance.
Wow, unless they get that aerial game with my boy Suoli'i.
If Joe's watching...
I don't think Joe's watching or too interested in my opinion, but I'm just telling him he's got a weapon parked in the garage that we need to use.
Yeah, very strong weapon. Okay, last one. Scotland versus Tonga.
Scotland. Oh, wasn't that a comeback too?
Yeah.
By RG.
Yeah.
Scotland
as well. Scotland all round. And the last game, England versus Argentina. Can England hold off Argentina, who are looking pretty strong at the moment, Jip?
They are, but to refer to Parksy's points earlier, their second string side went to Argentina and won. And you just think off the back of the All Blacks victory, there's an edge about them, and they're certainly, really staking their claim as a team that fits in the top 3.
Yep.
Yeah, England as well. I think they've just got some awesome ball carriers in their back row. So yeah.
Any chance for you on Argentina?
I think there's definitely a chance. I would not be surprised if there was an upset, and that would be the upset around for
Be the
England, though. I'll pick England. Not enough oracle work for Argentina to get it over. So over the line, I'll be picking England.
Fair enough. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod once again. Thank you to Bryn over in Japan, Jipper as always, and Hadley, thanks for coming and giving us a bit of Welsh insight along with all the rest. Appreciate that. Thank you to Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres for looking after us throughout the year. And please also send us through some emails and we'll look to get into your emails next week. Thank you to everyone behind the scenes. It helps the show happen. Mā te wā.